Hey, Mom Nation. Welcome to Mental Wealth with Laura Wood and Katie Holly Lambert, where we talk through generational trauma so we can leave a new legacy for our children. Counselor Laura is with Benevieri Counseling out of Chandler, Arizona, and you can find her on Facebook, on the web, or by the link in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, Mom Nation. It took a second. I couldn't see if we were live or not, but we are live. Hello, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Doing awesome. How are you?
Good.
Good. It's a little warm outside today.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little warm.
Yeah. I'm ready for October. Anyway.
So close.
Yeah, no kidding. Hurry up, fall. I heard the pumpkin stuff's coming out soon, so I'm so excited.
Anyway. It's already Christmas at Costco.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. It's totally coming up on my favorite time of year. So I'm excited about that. But we are not here to talk about holidays or your favorite time of year. We are here with Laura, and this is our once a month show. We call it Mental Wealth. We are here talking through challenges, mental health challenges. What else do we talk about, Laura? We talk about a whole variety of topics here.
Yeah, a lot of family stuff, a lot of parent-kid interaction stuff, generational stuff, really trying to dig in and stop the generational trauma passing down from, parent to kid who turns into parent, and then to kid who turns into parent, and just kind of keeps going if we don't take a minute to find it and stop it.
And clean up our stuff. So sharing is caring, but not this type of sharing. We don't want to share our past traumas, our reactions, our things that we have, or ways of behavior that we have sort of learned to, I was talking with Allie on the other podcast, on the From the Heart podcast, a little bit about this. And it's like, this just is not our junk. And we're learning ways of coping, ways of surviving that we never needed to begin with. And it's impacting our relationships, and it's impacting our lives, really.
Yeah, you're right. It's not ours. It's not our stuff.
It's not our stuff. We didn't develop this reaction to whatever it was that happened. So, why should we continue our lives behaving in that manner? Because, a lot of times it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work because it's not necessary. So we don't need it.
Right. So let's stop it. We stop the cycle here. My bangs are bugging me. I'm going to be playing with them the whole time.
Stops now.
Stops now.
Yeah.
Whether your bangs are good or not, it stops now.
It just stops right now. I know. Now I feel like I need to change my stuff up. Oh, no. You can't see me. I don't know what happened.
Oh, I can see you.
Oh, good. Okay, go ahead. Continue.
So today's topic is something that I've been hearing a lot about since the kids have been back in school for the last couple of weeks. And I know it's not new news. It's not a new topic. It's something that we've been dealing with for, again, generations and generations, right? I had a conversation, well, sort of. It was like a group message kind of thing with a couple of ladies and I. And one of the moms shared yesterday, her first question to us was like, when do girls start shaving their legs these days? And we're like, well, I don't know. I mean, I was a pretty hairy kid back in the day, so I probably started a little bit earlier than others. I don't know. But the reason why she asked that was because her little girl, I think she's 9. I think she said she's 9, was being harassed because of her hairy legs at school.
Oh, that's sad.
So super sad. It's like such a natural thing. Like we have hair on our bodies for a reason.
Right.
And now she's getting picked on about it. So I was just like, geez, man, like what about, and I know we don't know who this person is that was saying these things to this poor girl, but like what's common going on for these people who bully, especially at such a young age? Like, how do they even know to do that? Like, most of the time I'm viewing kids like that play with my son. My son's 8, and they're like happy, and they make friends really quick, and they're like, oh, hey, you want to go play? And that's that.
Yeah.
What about when it doesn't go quite like that though?
I mean, I think there's a lot of just people pick on other people because we make observations and, you know, we want to feel like we're winning. There's a competition aspect of things. So like in sports or whatever, like, oh, I'm going to beat you kind of thing. So like, there's just like that natural tendency to kind of be competitive, but I think it depends on the kid and it depends on the bullying. If we're in a situation where you're seeing a kid who's really, really, really being hurtful to another kid and like physically pushing and hurting them, then they're going to have learned that somehow, right? So they're going to have experienced something at home where they're feeling really angry. They're seeing a lot of anger. They need to like release that some way. Because a fight response is a survival response. So that's innate in us when we feel danger. So if there's somebody who's feeling a lot of distress and danger at home, they're going to have that fight response. It's going to be their go-to, right? So they're going to, you know, be reactive and be angry and be, you know, quick to maybe pick on somebody else or hurt somebody else because it feels better than being hurt ourselves. You know, what do they say? Hurt people, right?
Right. It's one of my favorite sayings. Yep.
Yeah. And so happy, well-loved, accepted, well-adjusted, supported children who are physically and emotionally safe don't hurt other kids. Mm-hmm. And they don't become adults who hurt other people. They just don't, because why would you need to do that? So the behavior is usually a response to some type of physiological threat.
Something that they're going through or have learned.
Yeah.
And so big confessions. So I'm thinking back to like when I was a kid, when I was that age, and there was a time, I want to say I was probably about that age, to be honest with you, probably between 3rd and 5th grade. And there was a time when, Laura, I was a bully.
Oh no. Were you a mean girl?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
True confessions right here, folks. Not something that I talk about very often. I'm obviously not very proud about it, and good thing I grew out of that.
That's not happening anymore. We forgive your child self.
Yes. But I was trying to think, like, what caused me to want to, and it was nothing physical.
Sure.
What caused me to like want to make fun of another person? And I did. And I made fun of like a handful of kids. They were, you know, the unfortunate part is they were kids that didn't have a lot of money. Why did I do that? Like, what an asshole. You know what I mean? And
you were a little kid.
Right. And I'm like thinking back, but you know what? I was bullied at home.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, by like adults.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I mean, we've talked about this 1,000 times. I didn't feel seen and heard and, you know, paid attention to by any means at all. And I'm like, oh, so that's how that manifests. Like, that's how that comes out on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. That explains it. Because that's what you're seeing. That's what you're feeling. That's what you're being taught how to do, right? So when our parents teach us how to interact with somebody, we're going to do that, right? Like a friend of mine was telling me a story about his little kids who are really little. They're like in preschool or something. And his little girl was trying to make a play date with this other little girl. And the one little girl was like, oh, well, we can't do it on Saturdays, right? Because that's the days that we spend with our dads. But then any other day of the week is fine because that's when we see our moms, right? Like just assuming that that's how everybody's life is, right? So it was like this little girl's experience of, well, we see dads on Saturday. Dad's day is Saturday. That's just what it is, right? And then every other day is mom's day. So assuming that that's the same for these other kids, because why would they think that their life is any different than any other kid's life? So we're literally teaching kids how the world works by interacting with them in a certain way in our home. So we're sending them out to express that into the world, to give that back, to say, oh, well, if I'm feeling anxious or distressed or upset, I'm allowed to hurt other people in order to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
That's an okay thing for me to do because that's what I see and hear and experience. So that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. And the more that I think about it, because I've been thinking about this for a couple of days, the more that I think about it, I'm like, so I come from, lots of things happened in this family I come from, but I come from this type of family that a few of the family members think that it's funny to pick on children.
Oh, it's
And
not.
they're just kidding, of course, but little kids take things literally. So there was a time when there was like a particular song that was sung about me that wasn't a very nice song that my family members would, and I'm like this little kid, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so I was taught to basically taunt another. And that's what I was doing. And I was getting in trouble at school. I was getting sent to the principal's office. All kinds of stuff that just, now that totally interferes with not only my social life, right? But that's totally interfering with now my academics. And I'm not in school learning like I should be. And I'm worrying about other stuff. And I'm getting in trouble. And I'm having detention and at that young of an age. So it messed with a whole bunch of things now that I think about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's confusing, right? It's like, well, why am I in trouble for this thing that happens to me at home all the time?
Mm-hmm.
No one gets in trouble when they do it to me.
No, it's funny. Everybody laughs.
It's funny. So now I deserve it when all these other kids deserve protection. And I don't deserve protection because nobody's getting anyone in trouble for hurting me.
Mm-hmm.
So what, that makes it okay? Like, what did I do to deserve to be hurt? And then now I'm not allowed to hurt others. Now I'm even more angry because I'm the injustice of it all. Right. Yeah. And so when this sort of perpetuates into this resentment for whatever now, right? Like, so now you kind of can go into whatever rabbit hole that follows. But anytime we're deliberately sort of teasing in a way that is maybe less than, like, maybe over the line, right? Then it's probably because we don't realize it at first. And then it sort of like starts into something, like I'm expressing myself in a way that I was taught to express myself. And then I learned that that's not okay. Then maybe I'm acting out because I need somebody's help.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it was embarrassing to get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you feel even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times too, when kids are picking on other kids, they need help. They're sending out signals to get help. When a kid doesn't know how to ask for help, or when they ask for help and help doesn't come, then they start to create emergencies in other areas because it has to be an emergency for them to get help. So they might pick on another kid. Well, then adults will come, right? Like they're trying to activate the caregiving system. As one of my trainers, Anna Gomez, she says, activating the caregiving system. How do you do that, right? Do you have an emergency? Do you get sick? Do you hurt somebody else? Then need your mom called to the principal's office? Do you, what do you do? So it could just be that kind of thing too.
Right. So back to the kid with the legs and the shaving and all of that. It's like, oh, geez, now maybe she's having to move into, or maybe she's feeling forced to move into a stage of life that she's not quite ready for yet.
Mm.
And so what does that do to kids, like in your experience, when they're sort of forced to almost grow up too early?
Oof. Too much too soon. I think it really depends on the incident and how it's handled by the parents. So the way that our parents handle our distress is going to indicate how that stays with us or not stays with us. Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's take the kid's mean to her. She tells mom, and mom says like, oh, get over it. Like, you're being sensitive.
Now what?
So now that's not a great situation. So now she doesn't feel heard. She's like, oh, am I being too sensitive? Now she's going to second guess whether or not she stands up for herself in the future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So then, okay, so let's go another way. She tells mom, and mom says, oh, well, why don't you shave your legs starting now so that nobody ever makes fun of you again? Well, now she's learning that other people matter, like other people's opinions of her matter more than what she is comfortable with, right? So now she's going to do this thing because of other people just to avoid the scrutiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the lesson from the reaction. So let's say she goes to mom, mom says, I am so sorry that that happened. It sounds like that really hurt your feelings, what she said. You know, that's not okay. What do you think what would you like for us to do? We have options. You know, we can talk to the school if you feel like this person is hurting you and that's not okay. We can work through a way for you to tell her that what she said hurt your feelings. You know, what do you think you need in order to feel better? Because it's not okay for someone to hurt you. Sometimes that doesn't need fixing. We don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can know that even though she said that about you, or she said something hurtful, that doesn't mean that you need to change anything about yourself. Because you're not wrong. You're existing the way that you exist, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go from there. So it's like, what do we do with that information? And what we do with that information depends a lot on how we know how to handle those situations.
Right. And
So
does it trigger us?
It triggers us. Yeah. So then now I'm distressed because my kid's distressed. So I'm mad, right? I want to like call this other girl's mom and yell at her or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to do all these things. Like, so now I'm in this situation where I'm reacting. And so my kid is basically saying, I'm struggling and I'm hurt. And now instead of tending to the kid, you're dealing with your own stuff, trying to solve your own distress by fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem to be identified here is, if I were to identify the problem, I should say, is that the child is hurt and has no template to manage those hurt feelings because someone said something mean. And so that's the problem to solve, not get the girl in trouble, change the situation, fix the legs, whatever. None of that stuff is what needs to be addressed here
Mm-hmm.
for the girl who was hurt.
Because
make
then, yeah, because then where does that stop? So
Exactly.
then you start building that habit of reacting to everybody's thoughts and feelings. And first of all, that's freaking stressful, right? And
Yeah.
now are you like, are you pulling yourself away from who you truly are by attempting to please whomever at their whim, whatever kind of day they're having?
Mm-hmm.
And does that get like dangerous at some point? Like as you start getting older and, you know, bigger topics start coming up, like sex and excuse me, and stuff like that, you know?
Totally. Yeah. When we start to make other people feel more comfortable or avoid scrutiny. So both of those are dangerous in their own way, but they're separate, right? They're totally different things. So I can make everybody happy because I want to feel loved. And then I can avoid scrutiny because I don't want to feel rejection, right? Like those are two distinct needs, to not be rejected and then also to feel love. So they don't necessarily do the same thing. But if I'm doing things, dressing a certain way, behaving a certain way, interested in certain things, just so that people stop being mean to me, or people don't start being mean to me. And this depends on the severity of the situation. So I can go into it. I want to clarify this in a second, but then I'm giving up my agency. And so as a kid, I'm learning that it's more important what other people think of me than what I think of me,
which is partially how kids' brains are wired anyway, right? So kids already think that because that's what when they're little, like that's part of your brain development, is to be really focused on how other people are treating you because you're dependent on other people, right? So that helps you stay safe. But a caveat is we need to make sure we're teaching our children appropriate hygiene and care for themselves so that they are healthy and happy. Because as I was saying that, I was thinking to myself, well, there's probably kids who aren't taking good care of themselves and getting made fun of for it. But that's a different problem, right? So we need to teach our kids to wear clean clothes and to
Brush your
be
teeth.
showered and teeth and all of that stuff, right? Like, so we need to teach our kids how to be healthy in a necessary, appropriate way. But we don't want to teach them to make decisions based on how other people are treating us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky, but the ultimate sort of bottom line is what's happening for the child. If I'm hurt, I need to know how to deal with hurt feelings, and I need to be accepted, and I need to be, sort of regulated. I need to be cared for in that moment, sort of comforted in that moment. And so if I'm getting comfort and safety and security of my parent helping me work through this and teaching me how to manage when people say mean things, then I'm fine.
And the more that you exercise that muscle, the more that sort of just rolls off at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're creating a template, right? You're creating a template on how to handle tough situations. And so you had said, does this push kids to grow up too fast? And I think the answer is yes, but not just that, right? So the content that our kids are exposed to is way too much. We have too much content without context. So there could be people bullying other kids about things that these kids don't even know about, right? So you're like introducing concepts that are totally beyond their awareness, depending on the kid, whatever. If somebody has, we all knew the kid who knew too much because they had an older sister or whatever, right?
Right.
It's kind of like that. So what is happening, and I just, have been thinking about how young our kids are to have access to so much information, and they have content without context, meaning there's no way for them to really discern what is important and what's not important. And so, for example, I heard this analogy the other day. I wish I could give credit because I don't remember where it was from, but basically the analogy was, you hear this on the news, there's a coyote storming through the grocery store, and he is like biting everybody, and he's like hurting all these other animals, and he's tearing up the place, and it's like really crazy going on at this grocery store right by your house. But it turns out it's a Roadrunner and Coyote cartoon. But I didn't tell you about the cartoon part. All I did was I described what happened, right? So for a kid, so that's what's happening all the time. Mm-hmm. You're hearing all of these stories of chaos and mayhem, and just the world's on fire because everybody is just is dysregulated by these life and death situations that are happening for every single person, and everybody's got these very strong, very reactive opinions. So these kids are hearing that, but they don't have the context to understand that in their home they are still safe, and that their parents are going to provide them with the tools and skills that they need in order to be successful. And that this bigger stuff is really adult stuff to worry about because it doesn't need to be solved right now for you, right? Like, it's not making the world dangerous for you in this moment. And so like all these kids are really just knowing these things that are too big for them to understand. Mm-hmm. And they don't really have a bigger picture. And we're doing that too, because we're reacting to a lot of stuff because we only have 5 seconds to view a video before we click off of it. And so 5 seconds of content doesn't really provide a lot of context. And so we're very surface level. We're not necessarily investing and engaging in how we can utilize this information and really digest and process this information in an effective and healthy way so that we can then action on the information. So as we get to this place of shorter and shorter attention, and then more and more and more access at younger and younger ages, we're sort of giving ourselves this mass sort of shared panic experience with no solutions, with just problems and fear. And kids' brains at 9 are not they're not capable of processing. They're not wired to and built structurally to process that type of information. And so the earlier we're hitting puberty, getting through all this other stuff, getting access to all this other information, the more difficult it is for our brains to help us cope and deal with it. And so we need to be mindful of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could do a whole show just in that, because it is such a huge thing, and things are so much different now, you know, than when I was growing up. And when I was growing up, I felt like it was overwhelming too, but didn't have the access to, like, social media wasn't a thing. You know, I mean, we had computers in my first grade class, but we had like one, and nobody had that at home, you know.
And it
what I
wasn't
mean?
the internet, you know.
It was absolutely not. It was word processor.
Right.
We
learned how to type. Yeah.
Exactly. We learned how to type. We typed stories. That's what we did in the first grade or second grade or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So what's that?
Oregon Trail. Do you remember? I played Oregon Trail on my little computer at school all the time.
So circling back to the scenario with the legs and the 9-year-old, I loved what you said about that. And it's, you know, something that I do with Jax a lot is just be like, well, you know, tell me how you felt about that, and tell me what you think you should do about that. Or, you know, you should just let it roll and just, you know, assume she had a bad day, or maybe avoid her tomorrow or something, you know what I mean? But I really love that because it opens up the lines of communication. And I think there's nothing more important than opening up the lines of communication with your kid and making them feel, you know, that you are a safe person to speak to. You know, you're not going to do any sort of knee-jerk crazy reaction that might embarrass them or scare them.
Yeah, or make them question whether or not they're making a big deal out of nothing.
That is huge.
Don't be dramatic. Quote, I'm using air quotes here, because as a little girl, I remember feeling like that. Like, don't be dramatic. Don't be too much. Don't be over, you know, don't be so sensitive. Like, don't make things a big deal that aren't a big deal. Right? Like, you're overreacting kind of thing. And I think women and girls get this a lot, right? Because if we have any type of emotional reaction, we're hysterical, right? Like, we're out of our minds.
Yeah, we're either not or we are.
Right.
No in between.
Yeah, there's no winning. So I think it's really important for young women and girls to know that they are allowed to have a reaction, because their hurt feelings are real, and that's okay. Like, man, it hurts my feelings when people pick on me.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody posted on Facebook, like, oh, you know, you look stupid, or I don't know, whatever, I'd be like, oh, you know, like, that would hurt me. I'd be like, ooh, ouch, that hurts my feelings. Like, I don't want people to be mean to me. So I think it's reasonable for a 9-year-old to get their feelings hurt too. So I think we need to be careful about kind of, oh, it's not a big deal.
Right. And just sweeping it under the rug. Because that I know what that feels like. That happened to me a lot. It's, you know, that's gaslighting, right? I mean, that happened to me a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But how would you suggest as parents we help our kids regulate that? Like, how, and granted, it's all opinion, right? So something might be a really big deal to you that isn't a really big deal to me. So why is my opinion the dominant opinion? But on the other hand, like, how do you help them regulate that And, you know, hey, if somebody came by with a baseball bat and smacked you in the head, that would be probably bad.
Yeah.
Worse than what happened today. Like, you know, like how do you
Yeah.
help them regulate that?
So you mean sort of gauge, you're measuring it, you're
Yeah.
triaging.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, a scale of 1 to 10 is how I do it, because that's how I was trained with trauma work. We ask on a scale of 0 to 10, like, how bad is it? And on a certain day, it could be a lot worse than another day.
Right.
I think there's certain lines that we need to be really clear on, right? Like, what is physical harm? What is, you know, bigotry? You know, like oppressive words and behaviors, right? That are discriminatory and oppressive. Those are different things. So, you know, we kind of want to make sure that we understand our lines of, you know, what is acceptable to handle on your own versus what do we need to get help for.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a kid, I want my kids to know, you know, that if my young girl is being talked to in a sexually suggestive way by another kid, yeah, those are just words, but we're going to go talk to the principal. Like, that's a bigger deal, right? We're going to handle that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we kind of want to make sure we understand our lines there and our boundaries. And then we triage it by asking them what's their experience, right? So on a scale, like, so from 0 to 10, like, how bad was it? 10 being like the worst ever, 0 being like, it really didn't bother you. If it's a 3, like, okay. Oof. So a 3, what's the 3 need? What do we need? How do we make that 3 feel settled? Do we sit together for a few minutes? Do we watch a show together? Do we talk about, you know, how you feel about yourself? Like, did it make you question whether or not you're doing something wrong? Right? Did you make you think that you're not good enough in some way? Or, right? So we maybe correct those cognitive errors, but ask the kid what they're experiencing. It's not up to me to say how bad it was.
Instead of projecting your opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ones that are about, you know, safety and things like that I had talked about, those are for me to teach my child that that's not okay. But when it's a child level sort of can probably decide how to handle it, then we let the child handle it and work through that. Like, let's talk about what that sounds like. Let's talk, you know, and a lot of times we don't need to fix it. We just sit with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because it's when somebody says, I am hurt, I don't like, okay, so if I say, you know, I'm feeling really hurt, and your response to me is, oh, I'm really sorry, let's go do this other thing so you feel better. I don't feel very validated in that moment. I feel like I'm not allowed to be hurt. I feel like it made you uncomfortable that I was hurt. And so I don't want to be hurt anymore because I don't want you to be uncomfortable. So now it's about you and not about me. So we want to keep it about the kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's super important. So what about the kid that did the thing? What do you think's going on with that bully? And what if you're the parent of that child?
Oh, if you're the parent of the bully.
Yeah. You get
I
that
think we
phone call.
learn more about that. So I have context questions that I want to ask, but just let me keep it simple, I guess. If my kid is hurting someone, then I need to make sure that they understand that that's not acceptable behavior. Like, we don't hurt others. And I also need to understand that if my kid is hurting something, if my kid is hurting someone, that's probably a sign that they are dysregulated. They are in distress. So now I have concerns because my child is in distress, and I need to get to the bottom of that and support my child in getting regulated and having better coping skills. Mm-hmm. So when kids hurt others, we can say, like, okay, it's not okay to hurt somebody. So now you're going to have to stay home from school for 3 days because that's the rules since you were suspended or whatever. Right. And so, you know, I also want you to understand that I'm here to understand you. I'm here to help you with whatever you're angry about, right? Like what's going on for you? How, maybe they're scared. Maybe they're feeling bad about themselves. Maybe there's something going on at home that's causing a great deal of stress, right? Like maybe, there's stress between parents. Maybe there's a transition, something happening. Most of the time, that's when kids act out. If you really zoom out, you can find it.
Mm-hmm. Like a divorce or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. So you want to maybe consult with others, maybe have a conversation with people who know the kid, ask questions like, what are you feeling like inside? When that happened, what did you want to do? Why, what was helpful about that? What were you trying to get across? Right. Because sometimes I'm teaching them a lesson so that they never hurt me. Maybe it's, they said something that triggered my fear of something, right? So whatever the trigger was that created the bully behavior, that can tell us a little bit more about what the kid might need in order to not need to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So having conversation without blame, without projection, really listening, because you can learn a lot when you really listen to your kid.
Yeah.
A lot. So what about when it gets dangerous, Laura? Like when, they're older and maybe not so communicative. Maybe you have no idea that something is going on. And there are some things that are going on at school or on the way to school or whatever. And they're older and they're not sharing with you. What kind of signs are there that you should be aware of to know that, hey, something is going in the way wrong direction? Because, it can get bad and it can get real scary and kids can take some drastic measures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first thing, I mean, it's really tough and there's no exact right answer because every person, every family, every dynamic is so different. But the first thing is spend time with your kids, just more than you probably are now. Mm-hmm. Everyone, I don't care how much you are spending, spend more. And like, not to say that somebody's doing anything wrong, but just like take what you're already doing, add on 10%, 15%, right? And when you're spending time with them, don't direct them. Don't criticize, don't teach them anything. Like take at least 15 minutes a day, hopefully, but every couple of days, whatever, and just have child-led is the word I'm looking for, child-led time so that you can get to understand them better. So in the polyvagal theory in therapy, we access sort of our regulation, our sense of safety, and then we access our sense of danger where we either sort of upregulate by having like a lot of anxiety or we downregulate by sort of shutting down, getting that depressed feeling. So if you're noticing the up or the down, if you're noticing like, oh, my kid is sleeping all the time. Yeah. My kid is, and it's not like a growth spurt, right? Like it's something else. My kid is used to spend time with their friends and now they're not. They were so like sudden behavioral changes, sudden things where it's like, that's not like them. Not, it's not like everybody else or it's not normal. No, it's like if what they were doing before changes to something different. That's like a sign that something's happening. You don't know what yet, but it's time to explore. And so anyhow, a couple of exploration questions that we can sort of use are like fill in the blank statements. So we can say the world is blank. So describe the world. Like, how do you see the world, right? Like the world is what? And then, and I am. So I am what? How do I fit into that? Like, what does that look like? So it's sort of just a fill in the blank exploration of a person's sort of individual perspective. And it's not to be corrected. It's not to be challenged. It's just to be understood and to be heard. Like, oh, that's interesting. Say more about that. When did you learn that? Are there specific things that taught you that? Right? specific experiences, things that, happened that, you realized, oh, I never want that to happen again. Right. So learning just about their perspective on the world can be really helpful. And there's a really great book called Anchored by Deb Dana, which is actually where I got The World Is and I Am. And then there's a whole bunch of other prompts like that. And so we can sort of find time to just explore and ask those questions. And a lot of times it helps if you're doing something else at the same time.
Like playing a game or whatever.
Playing a game, cooking dinner, folding clothes, literally anything, because the engagement in the sort of other activity will lower the brain's defenses, because kids are inherently going to be reluctant to share challenges with their parents for fear of letting them down or getting in trouble or being judged. Like they don't want to share things like that with us. So part of what's happening for them while they're going through this stuff and while we're interacting with them is that they have this other pole of their attachment system to make sure that nothing they say or feel or think is going to misalign them with us in the way that is threatening to them. And so I know everybody's thinking like my teenager disagrees with me all the time. Like, okay, granted, but that's not the same thing as having like a safely connected heart-to-heart conversation. Like, in order to have a heart-to-heart conversation, we have to sort of be a non-judgmental, a safe space to, control your face. Like, don't,
I have
control
a hard
your
time
face,
controlling my face.
please. Make sure that you're not like freaking out, overreacting. Like, you're just gonna let what they think be their truth. You're just going to learn what they feel, learn what they think, and just notice it. Accept that is their present reality, and then regroup later and, go on to the next step. But like, you're just learning.
Well, and I love what you say about that, because if you're constantly judging and, I'm totally guilty of teaching Jackson every single moment, and you know what I mean? But then I actually have noticed this in his personality, that he'll just kind of avoid doing that thing with me then.
Oh yeah.
Because he doesn't want to be corrected. Like, I am a huge stickler, and he's only in the 3rd grade, so he's still kind of getting good at reading and that kind of thing. And I'm a huge stickler, just for example, about accuracy. And so when we're reading at night, if he doesn't like say a word right, I'll correct him. And he gets so pissed.
Oh, I
and
bet.
I feel like I'm doing the right thing, because the teacher tells me whenever we have a teacher conference that his accuracy is really good. And I'm like, that's me. You know what I mean? But now it's starting to make me think, yes, he does need to learn those things. Does he need to be accurate? Yeah, that would be ideal. But does every moment need to be like that? And if I'm communicating with him in every moment like that, is that going to start cutting down on the amount of moments that I have, that his true being is present?
Yeah. Yes, it will. And it will also teach him that he's never good enough.
Yeah.
Like, so kids are under a constant performance evaluation, right? So all the time, 100% of the time, are you growing enough? Like, literally, are you physically growing enough, as if you have control over
like
that?
They can control that. Yeah.
Are you are you clean enough? Are you smart enough? Are you nice enough? Are you polite enough? Are you reacting the right way? Can you read? Are you in this program? Are you in this program? Are you learning Spanish and, piano and all, right? Like, and then also as they get older and older and older, are they working hard enough? Are they courteous enough? Are they respectful enough? Do they have good, smart, a mature worldview? Do they have, it's like literally every single thing a child does, you can find something wrong with.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee it, because they're children.
As a kid.
They don't know. And they're teenagers, and they're not adults. So we can pick it apart if we need to, if we want to, if that's our thing. So we all are capable of that. And one of our biggest things that I think we do as parents is we say like, well, the rest of the world isn't going to be nice.
Or life isn't fair.
I'm trying to prepare you to go out into the world where people aren't nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Logic, I get the logic. However, that means that nowhere in the world is safe because neither are you. So there's no such thing as safety because you're not nice, right?
Yeah.
And neither is the world. So
nobody else. Yeah.
Great. Now what? Right. So it's like, it's not helpful. So the opposite is actually true. So the more we can provide what's called a secure base is to be able to say, you're safe to mess up here, right? Because I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm not going to demean and criticize you. I am going to teach you, but right this second is more like the recital. So you're going to read it and I'm not going to like jump on stage and be like, oh no, you missed that, whatever, right? So like you're saying at bedtime, you just read to me. I don't correct you at bedtime. Fine. When we're doing homework, that's a different story, right? So pick your spots, but we have to be a secure base to teach our kids that they are worth grace. They are worth the space and the patience and the acceptance and the tolerance of difference, that even if it makes me uncomfortable. Because if we're not tolerant of that and we're not allowing them to be them, then what we're teaching them is that they are not acceptable in their most basic state, in their most raw existence is not good enough. So if they have bad ideas, which they will, let them have bad, like, oh, interesting. You know, I thought I had really bad ideas when I was a teenager, I'm just saying really bad ideas, right? So we want to not be criticized constantly for all of that stuff. So we want to have more moments where we're not directing, and that will open up space to just be more free for them to explore their existence and have room to grow and change and learn. But the more we criticize, the more they're going to double down on what they're already doing, because they are just going to win now.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to prove you wrong, and they're just going to fight you because nothing they do is ever going to get your happy attention anyway. So they might as well just go real hard the other way. Mm-hmm. That way they feel in control. Because if you're going to make me feel rejected, I'm going to reject you first so that I don't get hurt, right? Who's done that in an adult relationship?
Yeah, no kidding.
So we all do that, right? So that's kind of how we handle that. So once we get kind of like super beat down and we're on the defensive, now we're just going to like defend again. We're just going to be like, no, I don't need you. I don't like you. I don't want you. Like, you don't like me anyway. So I'm just going to make it so that you definitely don't like me, because then I'm in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how that shifts the wrong way for you when you're trying to connect. And so, yeah, have teaching moments, but then have existing moments.
Well, and then you're getting them into that habit of being judgmental on themselves. So now they're pulling that into it. And you and I both know how just exhausting and stressful that is. And, you know, being an adult doing that and, you know, just being super critical of yourself at every turn, that really can hold you back from a life of enjoyment. That can hold you back from a relationship of enjoyment, a job of enjoyment, like so many things held back from just by being super hypercritical of yourself. And now they're learning it at such a young age that it becomes ingrained, right? In their personality, really, right?
Yeah. Perfection is the enemy of fulfillment. You can't be fulfilled if you're always trying to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so perfection is the myth. It's not a thing, right? Like because it's subjective, right? There's no objective truth that we're all sort of seeking to obtain, right? Or attain. So it's like, what even is that? It's not a thing. So we want to kind of back off a little bit and sort of let ourselves off the hook and let our kids off the hook in that way, but we still need to hold them accountable, right? So when they get into those dangerous activities, when they get into the, teenage things that are scary or unsafe or unhealthy, we want to help them understand that there are consequences. So if they're self-harming, get them help.
Right.
Okay. If they're talking about harming themselves, if they're talking about suicide, take that seriously. 988, I think, is the line now for the suicide hotline. But if your kid is self-harming, you have to do something about that. Get them help, interact, like it's time to engage. So just first of all,
Yeah.
anything like that, you can take them to the emergency room, you can take them to a mental health facility. Banner Behavioral Health in Scottsdale is the one I like the best. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so that, and then if they're doing mean things, let's say they're harming others, but not like in a dangerous way, right? Like they're kind of a bully. They're, I don't know, maybe they're doing things that are sort of like on the line. They're breaking curfew. They're not, right? Like it's sort of getting to that point. We want to create like very clear and distinct boundaries and consequences and interact in a transactional way. So we want to enforce those in a transactional way. So, I might say that because this, the curfew was 10, you came home at 11:30. And so because you didn't follow the rule, now, as we had discussed, you won't be able to have your phone. So I have to take that now. And then they're going to be really mad and you're going to be like, I get it. I would be mad too. Like, it's okay to be angry. When you're angry, you have to behave still appropriately with respect and dignity, right? Like we don't demean others. We don't yell and scream and all that stuff. So I'm going to take your phone, give yourself a minute to cool off. No biggie. Love you. I'm going to see you for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is just the transaction.
Right. Just the consequence. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you kind of practice this more and more and more, it will be less reactive. If you're already at the point where they're screaming, door slamming, if that's where you are today, right now, this isn't going to go over great on the first try. Right. But what you're doing is already not great either. So let's just try something new. Right. Like that's at least how I look at it. Like what I'm doing is already not working. So let me try this other thing. And if that doesn't work, whatever, I'm still back. Like I can still go back and do it the other way. Right.
Right. Right.
Because the truth is no one silver bullet is going to work. If your kid is so out of their window of tolerance, if they're so dysregulated that they're already doing those dangerous things, it's going to take you some time to get them back down to a sort of safe space. But you can start by letting them know that the consequences are just the consequences, reinforcing those, kind of even sharing like, hey, I realize that I've been really reactive lately because I've been super stressed out and that's not fair to you. And so when I'm really reactive, I'm not treating you the way you deserve to be treated. So I recognize that in myself. I've been yelling a lot and I'm going to stop. And so I wrote down some things that have been on my mind that I want to make sure you and I are on the same page with. This is what I expect you to do. These are what the consequences are going to be. And I'm going to be super duper consistent on those because you deserve to know what to expect. And you deserve for me to do the hard work of holding you accountable because it's my job to teach you. And you deserve that. You deserve for me to invest and do this hard work. Mm-hmm. So I haven't, because I've been on, it's tough. I'm human, but here's where we are. This is why I'm doing this. I love you. I want you to have the best chances for success. So we're going to work differently. Right. So you're sort of leveling it out, leveling the playing field. And then when the thing happens, do the consequence. Don't let it go. You have to do the consequence every time and it sucks and it's hard, but do it anyway. And just do it anyway. And then let that play out. And as that continues, it's hard. You're going to feel like crap. You're going to have a hard time. Get a friend, talk about it, have an accountability buddy, right? Like sort that out as the adult in the situation, but remember you're the adult in the situation and this is your responsibility to regulate yourself so that you can treat them the way they deserve to be treated. Right. Mm-hmm. So you start there. That's step one. If the consequences are more severe, like jail or, failing a class in school or, like whatever those consequences are, we deal with them. Right. And we say like, right. Like, okay, so this is where we are. What's the plan? What are we going to do from here? And same thing. I don't not love you anymore because this happened. I still love you very much. And I wish this wasn't happening to you. Right. I wish you didn't have to experience this consequence. And I'm really bummed out. And I know that you're bummed out too. But here I am loving you anyway, and no matter how much dumb shit you do, I'm still going to love you.
Right.
Right. And so here we are.
I think that's huge right there. Like, no matter how much dumb shit you do, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah. I should put that on a t-shirt.
You really should. I mean, ideally they stop doing dumb shit, but.
Do we ever though?
No,
I do dumb shit still. And I still get mad when I'm held accountable for it. Right. When was the last time? So this is my last thing, but I want to help us understand and relate to our kids when they get mad, when they get in trouble. We cannot expect our children not to get mad when they get in trouble.
Right.
Because the last time I got a traffic ticket, I was pissed. Who am I mad at? Not me, mad at the cop.
Yep.
Right. Because that asshole wrote me a ticket and I'm really, and he's just on one, wants this power. Sure, I was speeding, but
I was running late.
I was running, like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not hurting anybody, right? So it's like, I'm the one who did this to myself, right? But I'm really mad and I want to blame that guy. And so you're that guy. Sorry. Sorry, but that's the reality. So they're going to get mad and they're going to blame you, and that's okay. Because that's normal.
As parents, we need to be okay with that. I have a hard time with that.
We need to be okay with that.
Yeah, we totally need to. What a talk we had.
Oof.
Woo. We always have great ones though. And I feel like we could go, we got some comments. I'm going to go through them really quick. I'm sure you have clients coming up, but Letitia Joseph says, love me some pumpkins. And I love you too, ladies. Aww, ditto. Nikki Stratton says, thank you for sharing your goodness. You are so welcome. Skylar says, so sweet. And Layla Robbins says, this is so useful. I love all of the info. So thank you, Laura. Aww. I know our mamas love this show, and it's really, really helpful to so many people because we all deal with stuff, right?
Yeah, we do. And none of us are really good at it 100% of the time. So
right. And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And that's okay. I'm really glad that anybody's here and listening, and hopefully they can get a little nugget that helps them get through the day.
Exactly. Well, I always do. And I very much appreciate you. So for those of us that want to get in touch with Laura, want to follow Laura, want to connect with her and connect with her practice, how can they do that, Laura?
You can find me at benaviri.com, BENAVIERI.
Yeah, that's
.com, and Facebook, Instagram are both Benaviri as well. And I think you could probably Google Laura Wood Therapy and it'll come up too. That might be easier.
Awesome. Laura is located in Chandler, guys, and she is super, super awesome with kiddos from age 6 you take all the way through teenage?
Pretty little, all the way to grown. Yeah. Anybody who needs it.
Awesome. And I know that you're amazing at what you do. And we very much appreciate you having here. We appreciate having you here on Mental Wealth yet again.
Thank you so much. I love it. This is really fun. I'm glad that I get to be with you every month and have this special hour.
I love it. I feel like it's just me and you talking. And I'm just like having my LaCroix over here.
I know, same. I'm like drinking my Diet Coke. They could sponsor us Diet Coke and LaCroix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They totally should. We need to look into that.
All right.
All right, friends. Love you too. Have a wonderful day. Bye, Mom Nation.
All right, you too. Bye.